Thanks for joining us again for another pre-Palmer chat from the Barry Budden, Brisbane, Bisley and soon to be Bloemfontein Broadcasting Corporation. Before we begin, I'd just like to thank all of those who have contributed to the fundraiser so far. It's supremely generous and I appreciate it hugely. If you'd like to, then the link I'll leave in the comments for this. Some parish notices. So just to let you know what is in store. So I'll be arriving in Bloemfontein in time to cover the individual world final. I'll then be bringing you some news from the range during the Palmer practice day. And then of course, live coverage of the 2 days of the big match itself. And I'm delighted to be joined today by two legends of not only Australian shooting, but global shooting. Darren Enslin and Steve Negus. Hi, both.
Hi, Dean.
So for those of you who perhaps don't know or live under a rock or whatever, Darren is the captain of the Australian Palmer rifle team. He led the Aussies to a convincing, I think we can say, win in Trentham in 2019. Darren also won the individual world title in Bloem in 1999, so he knows a thing or two about that range. Amongst other things, Steve is a coach on the Palmer rifle team. He's the individual world champion. He's the current holder of the Bisley Gold Cross, winning the Grand Aggregate last year, and has won no fewer than 13 Queen's Prizes around Australia. So what these guys don't know about full-bore rifle shooting isn't really worth knowing. Darren, I'm going to start with you, if that's okay. So 2019 was obviously a healthy success for Australia, not just in the Palmer, but across the board. I think you had 5 out of the top 10 in the individual. You won every single match across every single age group that you entered. What did you do differently in 2019? What was your approach to Palmer?
All right. Well, I can only talk from the Open Palmer team's perspective, not the undies or the veterans. But it was pretty evident, having been a Palmer shooter since '99, that the mount procedures were probably lacking in teams prior to the team that I led. No disrespect to any of the captains on how they did it, but I could clearly see, and having experienced being a shooter in those Palmer teams, that there was a bit of a disconnect. For example, in 2015, the Australians had an incredible shooting lineup. Again, they won a lot of the individual matches. Ben Ems, world champion, Matt Posbon, US championships. The expectation was that Australia were going to do something quite significant in the Palmer. But unfortunately, there was a significant point deficit at the end of the day. I was a shooter on the mount, I think, for 55 minutes, as number 2 shooter. That taught me a lot. So we've basically worked hard, and when I say we, I'm talking about my vice captain, Jim Bailey, Steve Negus, Jeff Grenfell. We make up what we call the management group. So it's a collective brains trust, I guess you could call it. Basically, we've changed the team culture. I think Steve, you could probably agree there's been a significant shift in the way we do things, and it's helped us maximize, getting the best out of the shooter to deliver manageable groups, as well as investing in very heavily in technical aspects, which we can thank Jeff Grenfell for, as well as the team fitness, mental fitness, physical fitness. I guess those were probably, in a nutshell, without giving away too much, the area that I basically focused on.
And Steve, from your perspective, you said it obviously as a key part of the management group, and in terms of things that changed from 2015 to 2019. Was there anything, from what you, from your position in the coaching chair, is there anything that you did differently?
I'll give you my perspective. I was coach in 2003, was so devastated by the result that I never nominated for 2007, came back for 2011, was so devastated that I didn't nominate for 2015. So it was with some trepidation that I agreed to go along with Darren, who seemed to have a very sensible plan for an approach to 2019. Indeed, that included 2017 going to South Africa as well. From my point of view, I've been in teams where the Aussies are very competitive, and the coaches, unfortunately, were competing against each other in the team. So what we did for 2019, and we learnt lessons from 2017 in South Africa. We had a good group with Darren, Jim, Jeff Grenfell and myself as the core. We built on that, and we were able to execute our strategy obviously much better in New Zealand than we did in South Africa.
And we were talking just before we came on about the final range in 2019. You obviously had Mitch Bailey going for what would have been the first ever clean sweep, having been clean going into the final range. And then a few of your shooters, certainly not alone across the range, copped it a fair bit from the Trentham wins. What was your approach in that final range? Obviously, Palmer is never over till it's over with 16 shooters, and albeit you had a healthy-ish lead after 900 yards. What was your approach there to staying calm and trying to bring it home?
That's a good question. We were all fairly confident in our ability to continue carrying that forward. In between the loud music coming over our shoulders from the festival behind us, and the distractions associated with that, we also faced about 4 different sets of conditions at the last range. Initially, it was fishtailing. Then we had a set of wind that came over our right shoulder. It was only doing sort of 2 to 6 right. Suddenly, it's up around 8 to 10 right, and we had a big stop. Our second shooters probably got carved up the most, and unfortunately, Mitchell was one of those shooters. And they spent a lot of time on the mound. And I can remember Darren being quite concerned because he called a halt and said that we're over halfway in time and we haven't finished our second shooters. And we consulted. We have the ability to be able to confidently talk amongst each other as the coaching group about what we need to do. We consulted with Jeff and sort of suggested that, the wind's now coming from sort of 8 to 10 right. Let's get into it. And we did, only for it to pick up even more. But I think it made it easier, that break, for our third and fourth shooters, because I can remember turning to my shooter, Brett McCauley, and saying, mate, strap yourself in, we're about to hammer it. So, and we caught up some time in our third shooters, which meant that we could coast a little bit coming into our fourth shooters.
Yeah, I think
nice.
We still had it pretty fine. I think we finished 4 or 5 minutes towards
we had one shooter that Gillian, who we held back because we wanted to make sure that we were right, but we knew Gillian could get all the shots away very quickly too.
And Darren, what's it like when you have in Jim Bailey, the winner of the Ballinger Belt, and Steve Negus, the individual world champion? And I mean, I suppose you decided as a management group long way ahead of time that Steve and Jim were going to be 2 of your coaches, but that must be a nice problem to have. Can you talk to us a little bit about your management group's approach to team selection?
All right, well, we'll start with a lot of people have questioned me, why have you got, if you include Jeffrey and myself, 4 very competent shooters who, one squad you would expect probably a record Palmer score, but we just felt that 4 people controlling the whole match, one competent person, say Steve, he's got 4 shooters under him, Jim's got 4, Jeff's obviously got the full 16. We just felt that was a far better way to spread the expertise and the knowledge, rather than tie that person up, just having 15 points count on that one person. for the match, you've got the whole 60 shots.
Yeah. And so it's, it's a question then of, you feel that Steve, Jim, Jeff, and obviously yourself are worth more in points to the team, on that side of the mound than on the deck.
Absolutely. It's again, that was probably one of the most significant factors that I could see we had shortcomings with in previous Palmer teams. If I wind the clock back to even the Zimbabwe days when I was competing for Zimbabwe back in '99 at the Palmer, having just won the World Championships, I was always going to coach and shoot, and that's a tough call. Having just won the World Championships, I was then invited to be the master coach as well. Just think about that. That it's an impossible task. You need a lot of experienced people in all positions. So, like I said earlier, our shooting platform for Australia has always been incredibly good. You just got to have that right mix for cohesiveness on the mound. And I guess selecting the team, we've also taken the approach of if somebody's doing their lucky last nomination, they've had a good run at Palmers, and there's a younger person who's got a lot more that we can invest in and can return in the future. That's how we've taken that sort of approach, where we've erred on getting more return for our investment. I'm sure Steve, you can probably talk a bit more about that. We also have learned that that last Palmer we took a lot of new caps. I remember one of the NRA board directors saying to me, with that many new caps, you're behind the 8 ball before you've even started. So challenge accepted. But we tend to find that new caps are very willing to listen, learn, and adapt to our new type of culture. We brought a lot of new caps into this team again. So that's probably in a nutshell as much as I really want to divulge regarding our team selection.
How many new caps this year, Darren?
Is 7, Steve?
I think that's right.
6 or 7.
I think it's 7 plus. We're bringing a reserve coach this year as well.
And was there? How strong was the temptation to? 5 years is, it's not a short span of time, but there must have been some temptation to stick with what was an incredibly successful group of individuals, that made up such a fantastic team. But obviously the decision there to refresh things, and I'm reminded of what Alex Ferguson used to say. He was ruthless when it came to refreshing his team, and you were never more dangerous than after you just won something, and he could be ruthless at getting rid of Ruud van Nistelrooy or whoever it was. It didn't matter that you just won the Premier League or the Champions League or whatever. He was always focused on building the next big team, and obviously building around youth. So I think that is that something, Darren, an approach that you've seen in other sports and in other successful leaders and tried to implement a bit yourself, or has it just kind of come to you organically?
It's sort of come organically, but believe it or not, the 2019 team, our management group, made the decision that it was going to be a developmental team. We didn't know we were going to win. Because as a management group, we'd never competed in a Palmer match, but we thought, well, we'll aim to develop this team and get a new culture, a young, fresh team, and develop it and take it forward. South Africa was always going to be the one where we wanted to champion it. New Zealand was just, we obviously got it right. We've just basically worked on what we built and just refined it, fine-tuned it a bit.
And Steve, how are the Aussies shaping up, would you say, for, in terms of, what are we, 3 weeks away from you guys landing in South Africa? How are the Aussies shaping up?
I think as a management group, we're really pleased with how the new starters have come into the team and how quickly they have developed. I'm going to be careful of what I say, I suppose, Darren, but I think we're in better shape than we were going into New Zealand. So our coaching group has really taken on board what Jeff has created in terms of a control process for the coaching unit on the mound. And our newer shooters and our younger shooters, really pleased. They're stepping up to the mark, and they're shooting very well. It's going to be the difficult choice for us is going to be who we put in the final team.
And what do you think are going to be the key factors that either swing team selection, or that you as a management group, that you as coaches and that you as firers are going to have to deal with in Blum?
Well, definitely wind, heat, and fatigue are going to be the key factors. We've trained in extreme heat. In fact, our last training camp was, Steve, around 38 with 96% humidity. Our shooters certainly felt like that, and in fact the coaches too felt like they'd been severely cooked. Unfortunately, the South Africans have the home advantage of high altitude and being on their own home range. But we're quietly confident that we've trained for it. But we'll obviously, when we get there, we'll see how everyone copes. I heard at the F-Class Championships last year, COVID swept right through the range, which is a very unfortunate thing. No team wants that. But yeah, we've prepared for our contingencies, but I think the wind, heat, and fatigue is probably going to be the major players.
You mentioned home advantage there, Darren. Steve, do you think Blum is a range where home advantage really does count for something? Obviously, conscious that South Africa's last Palmer win was obviously in Bloemfontein in '99. Do you think that gives them a real edge?
I think that there is some benefit from familiarity with the conditions. Obviously, they know the range quite well. Interestingly, we took the view that we had enough information from our 2017 trip that we didn't send a team last year as part of a fact-finding mission. And instead, we've used the information that we had from 2017 for the Australia match to develop our strategies in training for this time round.
I would ask you what those strategies are, but
well, wind, heat, and fatigue, I think Darren mentioned.
Yeah, earth, wind, and fire. Great. Steve, I just wanted to ask you a little bit. I mean, obviously, you won the individual world in 2019. What was your approach to training for that, and what's been your approach to this time as well? How have you prepared to defend your world title?
Right. I'll talk about 2019 first, and the number one part of my strategy was the undying love and support of my wonderful wife, Donna, who has been absolutely wonderful relationship with her since we were teenagers meeting on a rifle range. And to get to coach her in a Palmer match, she ended up being called up to shoot first down in New Zealand. And I think when I looked at the scores later, she had the top score of any first down shooter when she hadn't trained for it, but she stepped up on the day. So first of all, a big thank you to my lovely wife, Donna. And
is she holding the camera?
She must be.
But Ben Picton may be watching this later, and he'll probably have a chuckle because he never let me forget that I forgot to mention Donna in my winning speech. So there you go. I had a two-part approach for New Zealand. First of all, it was about my position and the ability to fire quickly. So I trained for several months, scat and on the range, staying in position for 30 to 40 minutes, just on aim. And then after 5-7 minute break, I would quickly shoot 3 or 4 shots. And I did that in scat and I did that in live fire. And I remember in 2018, we had the ACT championships on the Canberra range, which is not as strong from a wind point of view as Trentham, but it's always moving. Every shot's a sider in Canberra. And I was fortunate to win that match following that approach. And I thought, okay, that's given me a lot of confidence that I'm on the right track here. So very much it was a case of being able to maintain a position and being able to fire quickly. And when I say fire quickly, it was getting my shots away within 3 seconds once I've made a decision, which is not like me. I love to as my eyesight is starting to fade, make sure I've got the perfect sight picture and fire a good shot. But I had to have confidence in myself that I would, there it is, first sight picture, go. And I remember at the second range of the World Championships, because they shot, I think it was 900, then 1,000. And at 1,000, I had a 68 with nothing. And I had 2 high shots and 3 shots underneath for inners. And I thought, wow. But then I looked to my left and looked to my right, and there are credible people getting 40s and 50s out of 75. And I thought, okay. So it kind of set me on the path then to continue to do what I had trained for, which was to fire my shots very quickly once I've made a decision. And at one stage there, if it was really rough, if I hit the black, I was happy. Magpies were good because other people were getting 2s, 1s and misses. So anything in the black.
Well, as someone who never broke 60 at 1,000 yards, I can and finished with 5 outers in a row. I can certainly sympathise there, mate.
Yeah, so that was part of the strategy. And look, I think that we benefited from going to New Zealand a couple of years before that. I did put a fair bit of work, and I think this is one of Charles Dickinson's questions, about strategy for the wind. And we could have large brackets of wind. As an example, I think on the early on, it was coming strongly from the left, running sort of between 2 up to 9 left. And if you tried to follow those extremes from any graph that you might traditionally plot at Bisley, you'd get yourself into trouble because suddenly you'd be on 9 when you needed 2 and vice versa. So my approach was to identify the bracket that was in the average. So I'd be running with 4 to 6 left, and if it was in there, just go. And if I got it in the black, I kept going. And if I suddenly saw a change coming from another direction or an extreme coming in, I'd wait. And I'd wait on aim, and when it came back to that bracket, I'd go bang, bang, bang.
So you're in the 4 to 6 bracket, go on 5. Now I'm in the 9 to 12 bracket, go on 10.5. No. Wait till it comes back into that bracket of wind that I'm happy with. So that was the training, to stay on aim and just be patient, wait for it to come back into that average bracket. And then I would go quickly fire, bang, bang, bang. So I wasn't doing a lot of winding to the extremes. Having said that, I can remember with a lot of clarity that the final that I shot in, my true wind from recollection was a half left up to 12 left. And do you think that identifying the bracket in the middle was easy? No, it wasn't. I think I had 3 outers in that shoot. And the worst possible mistake I made, I can remember going on to aim and putting my head down and the shot went off. And I thought, oh my God, I hadn't even started sighting it. And the target stayed down. And I thought, oh no, I've really muffed this. And slowly the target came up and up, and I thought, oh no. And it was just a red spotter just above the bullseye. So they must have gauged me out, but they took about 3 minutes to do it. And you didn't even have the target in your sight when you let that off. It was just
I was just putting my cheek down, and it went. So
yeah. I remember watching you in that final. I think I was doing David's scorebook, and he was I think David Luckman was the top shooter in that final. I think he had a 66. And I was looking across at you, knowing that obviously you'd gone in pretty strong. And every time I looked at you, you were shaking your head. Just, and I think you walked off with a 59 and won it by a point. So
Yeah.
you got there in the end.
Well, I changed my strategy after I got that high shot. And I said, you knucklehead, you've got to make sure you fire good shots, which I had never done through the whole World Championship. It was basically first sight picture and go. And by changing it to firing good shots, I had lovely elevation for another couple of outers and 1 hour to the finish, of course. But I barely hung on by changing my strategy.
So obviously, Bloemfontein is going to be a reversion to, the Bisley style pairs and threes. What have you guys, and obviously that is, I mean, it's not anathema to you, Steve. You're obviously hugely familiar with it, coming over to Bisley every year. But for the rest of your team, Darren, what have you guys been doing to kind of prep for not shooting strings?
Practicing shooting in 2s and 3s at 1,000 yards. We're trained for it.
And no concerns?
No. It's
We had a lot of people come over to Bisley in 2023, probably our largest team since our 2010. And part of that was not so much about going over there to win the matches. It was about getting familiar with the Bisley style shooting and to understand what it's about. So for a lot of the other team members. So I think that this team has done more work in that regard than any other team I've been involved in. 2017, we probably left ourselves a bit short in training for Bisley style, but not this time.
And Steve, you feeling confident about defending your title, and Darren about regaining it from, you can make it 2 from 2 at Bloemfontein?
Well, wouldn't that be nice, eh?
Cool.
Well, it was interesting you say that. I've been doing a lot of administration this year, Daniel, with the NRA, etc. And I got down to fire some scat the other day, and I looked at my record, and I hadn't fired scat training since February last year. And anyway, I fired a 20-shot string, and I looked at it at the end, and I thought, my God, that's one of the tightest strings I've ever shot. So it just goes to show that training through competition is equally as valuable as training without competition.
Absolutely. Well, look, I wish you guys all the very best of luck. Conscious that we're already at half an hour. So we should probably, I think we had a question, as you say, from Charles Dickinson. He must be writing a book about the Rangers of the world or something. And he wanted to know that your views on which range you think that you've shot on that has the most challenging conditions.
Well, it has to be Trentham, doesn't it? It's Stickledown's probably number 2. And Blom was probably number 3 in my mind. Those are probably the top 3.
What do you think about, what do you think as both a coach and a shooter, what do you think that when it's at its worst, Bloemfontein is uniquely challenging?
Probably that year of 1999. That was for the individuals. It was just, I remember Parag Patel coming up to me and saying, Darren, what are you looking at? Why? Why score significantly higher?
Make sense.
We can't do it. It's just sticking out like that. What are you actually looking for? And I can't remember what my answer to that was, but I just exactly what Steve, when he mentioned, when I got a patch, I hammered it. That was the only way to try and get through it. Is basically follow the spotter when you could, and then just park it. And I think people were just trying to, like Steve explained earlier, they were trying to graph it, and it just didn't make sense. You had brackets that year, 11, 12, 13, 14, and then you'd get 15, 16, 17, 18. I haven't experienced another year like that. That was pretty unique. Steve, you shot there probably a lot more recently. it's just a lot of mirage and sort of slow, gentle pickups and drop-offs, and you just get caught at the wrong time. And I suppose that the spacing of the flags is pretty wide. That's one disadvantage.
Yeah, I think that the 2 years that I've shot there, it's been tricky, but not devastating. I turned up on the first day to collect my cards, and I looked down the range, and there are people being sandblasted on the mound. And I thought, wow, I'm glad I'm not shooting on that day, which was, I think, the very first match before the South African Championships. But yeah, from a range point of view, I'd actually go with my recollection of Stickledown in the 2003 Palmer match. As a coach, we got drawn on the top of the hill when the wind was howling in from the left, and we had 18 to 26 left on our sights on the top of the hill. The only way that we could tell it was 26 was because the flagpoles were bending.
Yeah, I remember that.
It was that was probably my worst day on the rifle range. So it's funny how a devastating defeat inspires you to get back up and go for it again.
I remember, I mean, I don't remember obviously the 2003 final, I wasn't there, but the 2018 Queen's final was like that, and I was drawn right at the top. And I thought, you know, when you get a 1-4 draw on Stickledown, you're kind of thinking, oh dear, especially when it's an absolute howling gale from the left. But bizarrely, I was able to use it to my advantage, because people further down the range couldn't see when it was really picking up. And, you know, it's a similar thing. I think I fired one on 25, and I remember just winding on and winding on and winding on as it kind of picked. And you just watching the flagpole go like this and just going, well, that's maybe 22, 24. And you go, well, you might as well go the whole way. And I think I'd have got a bullseye on the left-hand side and people were missing. It was just a pure piece of luck. But yeah, it's an amazing like that. Absolutely incredible. Well, look, guys, this has been absolutely fantastic. I'm really looking forward to seeing you both, hopefully in the top 10 final when I get there in March. And look, I wish you guys all the very best. And thanks so much for this.
And if anyone's watching right now and you haven't already contributed to Dan's page, then please put some money in to help him get there to cover the final.
Thank you, Steve.
Good night.
Cheers.
Cheers, everyone. See you in Blum.